Thanks for having me back again today. I wanted to spend a little time and talk about password managers. And I think a good password manager app can be a real game changer for people. I know how frustrating it is for folks to hear from people like me that you got to change your password, you got to have a strong password, you got to have a strong, unique password for every account. More people are doing more online. They might have 20 passwords. Maybe next year they might have 40 passwords. I totally understand and empathize with how frustrating it is to hear that advice. But I also know the bad guys are well aware that people still, despite year after year, these reports coming out, the top 25 passwords are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or A, B, C, D, E, F. Despite those reports year after year, people continue to use terrible passwords. There are tools out there that will crack a password in less than a second, depending on the strength of that password. And in many cases, people use passwords that are easy to guess about them. So, I can go on Facebook, I can find you, and perhaps that quiz you took where you talk about which Disney princess are you, right? And all that information you supply there, that gets leaked to the bad guys, or just things that you post. If I know your favorite movie is The Patriot, I might guess that's your password, or Mel Gibson, or whatever. People put a lot of information out about themselves on social media, and there's a whole sphere of cybersecurity called OSINT, open source intelligence, that's geared around using things like Google searches, Shodan searches, Facebook, and other social media platforms to learn information about people that's readily available in the public that can then be used to hack you. So, one of the best defenses against that is to have a good, strong, unique password for every site. Now, a password manager will make your life vastly easier. And I want to come back around at the end and talk a little bit about multi-factor authentication. Maybe we delve into that as a separate topic. But Google and Microsoft have both recently stated that that multi-factor authentication will block 99% of all automated attacks. Even if the bad guys get your credentials, your username and password, if you have multi-factor authentication set up, it's going to stop all those drive-by attacks. Now, if you're being targeted by an advanced persistent threat, APT, a nation-state actor like North Korea, China, Russia, or even the United States government, they'll get around that if they need to. But it's going to block most attacks. So if you couple a strong, unique password on every site /app/platform that you use with multi-factor authentication, you're going to make yourself a really hard target, and most bad guys are going to move on to a softer target down the street. So let's get back to this password manager thing. What do you need to know? The good news is there are a plethora of very secure and frankly very easy to use password managers that will make your life so much easier once you adopt them. My advice is always, before you just go out and start downloading any kind of software or app, that you do some homework and you vet it to make sure that it's not some type of thinly veiled malware. Google has removed hundreds, if not thousands, of apps from their Play Store because they purport to be one thing and are ultimately doing something else. So it's very important that you vet any sort of software that you download if you're not getting it from some sort of trusted IT resource, your IT department, that sort of thing. And there are some great sites out there where you can do that. CNET, ZDNet, Consumer Reports, Tom's Guide. There's a bunch of these sites out there. So in order to help focus this conversation around password managers on a good password manager, I don't want you to just take my advice. I would encourage you to visit all of those sites. Because password managers are important and powerful tools, and that could potentially backfire if you don't get the right one or use it correctly. Thankfully, all these magazines have done a lot of research on this, and for the past several years, they'll make recommendations. They have editors, they have experts that are vetting this software, so you're going to have some fairly high degree of confidence that what you're going to get will do what it says it will do. And so what I like to try to tell people to do, if they're not tech savvy themselves and just want to find something that's going to work well, is do your homework. Visit 2 or 3 of these sites. Hit ZDNet, hit Consumer Report, hit Tom's Guide, hit PC Magazine, and see what they recommend for a given category of software. And one of the things you're going to find is there's about 3 or 4 password managers that typically show up in the top 5 of anyone that rates them. You've got password managers like Keeper, Dashlane, and LastPass that are typically showing up at the top of everyone's list. Either LastPass is often the top, or certainly in the top 3 or 4 of every one of those sites that I mentioned. I personally am a big fan of LastPass. One of the things that's great about LastPass is, in addition to being secure and easy to use, it has a family option where for one relatively low fee, you can get your whole family using LastPass. So most of these password managers work something like this. You either install an application, or in many cases a browser plugin. LastPass is a browser plugin. But again, most of these work more or less the same way. So whether you use Chrome, Edge, Firefox, Opera, or whatever, they'll have a plugin that hooks into your browser. And you create a strong master password for your LastPass account. Now this is a critical piece, right? The master password that you create for your password manager account must be a secure, strong password, right? If they can crack into your password vault, your password manager, well, then they have the keys to your entire kingdom. So you absolutely, positively must have a strong password for the password manager. My advice would be a passphrase of some sort. Longer is always better. More variation is better. So if pistachio ice cream is your favorite ice cream, your passphrase might be something like, I love pistachio ice cream. And the O is replaced with the 0, and the I's are replaced with the number 1, something like that. Now, if everyone knows you like pistachio ice cream, or you talk about pistachio ice cream all the time on Facebook or Instagram or something, that's probably not a good password. But my point is, if you pick a phrase, something that only you would know, something that's easy for you to remember, and especially if you intermingle numbers in the place of letters, or symbols in the place of letters, the ampersand in the place of A, something like that, it's going to be fairly easy for you to come up with a very strong password that will be very difficult to crack, very difficult for someone to guess, to secure your password manager. Once you got that locked down, you can turn on multi-factor authentication on the password manager. All of the major password managers support multi-factor or two-factor authentication, at which point it's going to be very hard to crack into the password manager account. Once you have that account set up, then basically almost all of these work in a very similar way. You go to a website, you log into that website with your existing credentials, and it will capture that information. Put it in its encrypted vault. LastPass, for example, uses AES 256 encryption, so it's very secure. And when you go to log in the next time, whether it's your bank or Facebook or whatever, it will remember that password and automatically plug it in for you. So it makes it very easy for you to manage your passwords. And I think even more importantly, what it allows you to do is then generate very secure passwords for every site that you don't have to remember. So for example, you go to your LinkedIn site, you log in, and you have it generate a password for you. You change it to that password. You can generate passwords as long as the site will take. My advice is literally, if the site will allow you to have a 256 character password, have LastPass generate a 256 character random password. Of course, you'll never be able to remember it, but you won't have to, because LastPass will take care of that for you, or whatever your password manager of choice is. Again, there are many good ones out there. So now the next time you log in after you've changed that password, it'll automatically pass that password along. You don't have to know or care what it is. If you do get breached somehow, it makes it very easy to change your password, and it gives you a way to generate ridiculously strong, virtually uncrackable passwords, easily manage them, and probably of equal importance, manage them across devices. So you can install LastPass on your phone. They have an Android and an iOS version. You have LastPass installed in your browser. There is a LastPass actual software app for Windows, but it will sync itself up across all your devices. So once you get this set up, whether you're trying to log in from your iOS tablet or your Android phone, your Windows PC, it doesn't matter. Your password vault will be available. When you go to log into a site, once it's remembered in there, it will know and just pass that password along for you. So again, it gives you a way to securely store your password and other information. You can store bank account information and so forth in there in a very secure, encrypted way, so that it's very difficult, if not downright impossible, for someone to get that information. And while there are some folks, and I typically tend to be the tinfoil hat guy who's saying, be as careful as possible. There are people who will tell you password managers are bad. In general, these things have been around for a while, and I look at it as a balance. Are you more likely, assuming that you have a good, strong password, master password on your account, and multi-factor authentication turned on, to use strong passwords on every site and get hacked, versus you have to try to remember a handful of bad passwords? You're much more likely to get hacked on the latter, right? The shorter a password is, the quicker it can be cracked. The easier it is for someone to guess about you, the quicker you can be cracked. Once you get a password manager set up, and by the way, almost all of the major password managers that have been made the editor's cut all have a free version. LastPass has a very powerful free version. In fact, some of the editors and some of the articles I read about it said, we're not really sure where they're going with this, because they keep taking functionality that used to be behind the paid functionality, and now they've put it into the free version. And again, I'm not here to sell LastPass to you. I encourage you to check out the reviews on Keeper, Dashlane, RoboForm, 1Password. There are several very, very viable, excellent password manager tools out there. But I really encourage folks to check this out. I predict you'll run into a little friction in the beginning, but once you get it set up, and once you get it syncing across all your devices, and you find out how easy it is to manage your passwords, change your passwords if necessary, generate extremely, extremely secure passwords, and frankly, use these tools for free or at very little expense. I have a paid account on LastPass. Again, with the family option, it will let you, to the extent you want to, share passwords amongst the family. While in general, I would suggest each person should have their own unique passwords. For like a bank account between spouses or partners or something, it might make sense to share that password, particularly in the event that, something unfortunate were to happen to one of them. And the last thing I really want to comment on here is, in addition to having a strong password for your master password, you simply must have a strong password for that master password. Usually all of these applications, in addition to allowing you to set up multi-factor authentication, which I cannot recommend strongly enough, I would never, ever put my passwords in any sort of system like this that did not use multi-factor authentication. The other thing you need to do is look into emergency access options. All of these tools that I'm familiar with have a way for you to create what's typically known as a one-time password, or like an emergency password. What they call it in any given application may vary, but basically it will allow you to generate a password that you can then print out and put in a safe place. So if for whatever reason you get locked out of that account, like you forget your master password, you have a way to get back into that account so you don't have to start over. So that would be another piece of advice. And then also, I would encourage folks, if you're really, really concerned about security, take it a step further and move away from the text-based multi-factor authentication and look at either an authenticator app. LastPass has one. Authy is a very popular authenticator app. I'm a big fan of these things. It adds another whole layer of security, because now, instead of merely being able to get your text somehow, they actually have to physically have your phone, be able to log into the phone to use that authenticator app. You might even want to look at like a hardware authenticator, like a YubiKey or something. If you couple that with a good, strong master password, I think you're going to find that your average password manager, again, LastPass, Keeper, whatever, is going to give you a much, much higher level of security. And once you get over that a little bit of the initial friction, once you figure out how it works, I think you'll find you'll not only be much better off, but frankly, it'll make your life just better all around. It'll make all of your interactions across the internet a lot smoother and substantially more secure. So I encourage you all to check it out. You can find me on LinkedIn or Twitter, or dave.hatter at InTrust IT. I'm happy to discuss these things with you. I think it will make your life a lot better. You should check out a good password manager like LastPass today.